We're proud to announce
Chance Forever. Help Rotary make history at endpolionow.org.
Welcome everyone to the Rotary Club of Tulsa. We have a very special meeting in store for us. You'll be pleased, I believe, about spending your lunch hour here at the Rotary Club of Tulsa. To start our meeting, Mike Holman will provide the invocation and lead us in the pledge, and then Catherine DeCamp will introduce visitors. We will not be singing again this week. I want to spend a second talking about that. This is not because we've permanently removed the singing from our agenda. It's just because we have some more special singing, and I'd rather have that instead of us. But we do sing well, especially when Joseph is over there belting it out. So don't worry, we'll be singing later, just not this week. And now our invocation will be by Mike Homan, and he will also lead us in the pledge.
If you'll please bow your heads and join me in prayer. I'm actually going to recite a prayer that the 28th President of these United States, Woodrow Wilson, penned. Almighty God, ruler of all the peoples of the earth, forgive us, we pray, our shortcomings. Purify our hearts to see love and truth. Give wisdom to our counselors and steadfastness to our people. And bring us at last to the fair city of peace, whose foundations are mercy, justice, and goodwill, and whose builder and maker you are. In your name we pray, amen. Now if you please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Today, I have the honor of announcing all of the visitors. If you would please hold your applause until the end. I know that's hard, but we'll greet everyone with a big applause after we've announced all the names. Our first guest is Michael Livingston. If you'll stand when I call your name and then just sit back down after. Michael Livingston is the son of Harry Livingston. We have Cindy Harp, who is visiting with Luann Buehlinger. Quentin Hauk is with Chuck Jordan. There they are. Brooke Wright is the grandson of Glenn Wright. John Michael McGrath is the son of John McGrath, and also John has brought Richard Sevenoaks with him. There they are. Tony Zaranti is the guest of Scott Philstrap. Natasha Harris, Jennifer Barkas Schaefer, and Kelly Hall are here from Rotaract. Steve Higgins is the guest of John Raines. Chase Baker is our outbound exchange student who will be going to Brazil. He's here with Duff Weddle. That's everybody, if you'd like to applaud. We also have one visiting Rotarian, Mickey Moore. Thank you.
All right, so remember last week we did our little phones out, take notes thing, so get your phones out again. We're going to talk about some upcoming programs that I think you'll want to make sure are noted on your calendar. First of all, don't forget that next week our speaker will be Philip Montgomery, the new University of Tulsa head football coach. Those of you who don't like sports, you need to come anyway because we inevitably talk about other things besides the pigskin. On July 22nd, Amika Naka, who is a former ORU student who was injured severely in a semi-pro football game. He is now a voice of inspiration. He speaks all over the country, and I'm sure he'll have some really inspiring words for us. And long term, I want to note one program I'm particularly excited about. On September 9th, 2015, we'll have a person speaking to us who is probably is the most accomplished athlete ever to speak at a lunch meeting at this club. She was called the greatest women's basketball player ever by Sports Illustrated in its July 8th, 2015 edition. So that was just this week, with a feature article all about her. She's a member of the Basketball Hall of Fame, and she and her brother, Reggie, are the only brother-sister pair in the Basketball Hall of Fame. After her basketball playing and coaching career ended, she had a broadcast career for over a decade on ABC, TNT, TBS, and ESPN. Cheryl Miller is now the head women's basketball coach at Langston, a job that Sports Illustrated claims is not her end game, not by a long shot. So any day now, she may get a better offer, and we're lucky to have her in September. So please mark your calendars for that. It'll be a special day, at least in my opinion. Another one you might want to mark on your calendar is September 16th, well, when we will have Counselor G.T. Bynum, who will talk to us about water in the river. I know we have it now. In fact, we have so much, you wouldn't want to ride your boat down the river. I hope you saw that article today. Wow. Anyway, mark your calendars. And let me also mention, on your tables from now on, you will find one of these. So if you're brave enough to effectively admit you don't have a phone or don't use your phone, then grab one of these and write yourself a note with the dates of these programs coming up, and make it a point to come and bring a guest, bring your family, etc. And over the coming weeks, I'll make it a point to talk about some of our future programs, just like I did today, so you can make special arrangements. All right, today we are lucky to have some more special music. We're privileged to have an opportunity to hear our fellow Rotarian, Phil Armstrong. For those of you not at the IBA Awards, you might remember that Ed Monette mentioned Phil Armstrong's national anthem at the IBA Awards when Ed made his comments on the June 24th, during the June 24th meeting. He gave a rendition of the national anthem that will not soon be forgotten. So we're privileged today to have Phil, come on up, Phil, provide some special music for us today. Phil will give us a few words about his selection and then entertain us. Phil?
My fellow Rotarians, You'll Never Walk Alone, written for the Rodgers and Hammerstein play Carousel, is about hope and aspiration. I dedicate my rendition to the grieving yet forgiving families of the 9 victims of the slaughter at Mother Emanuel AME Church in Charleston, South Carolina. These are our fellow Americans, and today we let them know they will never walk alone. When you walk through a storm, hold your head up high and don't be afraid of the dark. At the end of the storm, there's a golden sky and the sweet silver song of a lark. Walk on through the wind, walk on through the rain, though your dreams be tossed and blown. Walk on, walk on. walk on through the wind, walk on through the rain, though your dreams be tossed and blown. Walk on with hope in your heart, and you'll never walk alone. You'll never walk alone. Thank you.
Now you understand why we didn't sing. Just a quick reminder about some committee meetings today. There they are. The Budget Committee will meet in room 233 and hopefully soon wrap up the budget process for this year. The Classifications Committee will meet in room 232, which is a good sign that we have some members to talk about. That's great, new members. And then the Long Range Planning Committee will meet in room 234. So don't forget your committee meetings after our meeting today. Last week, we started our Who Was That contest, and I challenged the club to beat my first entry, which was my showing of Tim Caldwell and Rob Reiner. No challengers have spoken up yet, so today I will submit my second entry, making it even harder for you all to win. So our next one, Marty, since you're Rotarian of the day, there are some of us in the club who think you look like Kathy Griffin. You actually do have sort of a similar personality. You don't agree? All right. For our sponsors, we are going to try something new. I told you last week that one of the things we would do is try to change things up for our sponsors a little bit, provide our sponsors a little more value for their sponsorship. We can skip that one. Anyway, Alicia, I get plenty of microphone time. Alicia will give a little talk today about our sponsors.
We want to say thank you to all of our sponsors, and anything that you need, we ask that you please look to your fellow Rotarians. Today, of course, we have Jeff. Gable Gottwald is one of our sponsors. Diane Peacock with Peacock Financial Services. Rhonda Daniel with Spirit Bank, and Trudy Sweeten with BOK Center. So thank you all very much.
Next, I believe we have an announcement from the Rotaract people. Do we have that today? And thank you all for coming, by the way. I noticed that we have a table, which I mentioned last week, for the Rotaractors to occupy, and I encourage those of you who are not in Rotaract to sit there with them. It's not as if we need them to be on an island at the Rotaract table, but we're really glad to have you all here.
It's the island of Rotaract.
Yeah, Alicia and Rotaract, yeah.
I'm very honored today to be presenting Rebuilding Together Tulsa with this check that was a benefit from Rotaract's Wine, Cheese, and Chocolate fundraiser this spring in April. I have been with Rotaract last year as the local service chair, where I worked with Rebuilding Together Tulsa to organize our events and volunteer activities. And Rebuilding Together Tulsa is a local nonprofit organization that helps to improve the lives and homes of the local Tulsa homeowners. And this coming year, I am the Vice President of Rotaract, and I look forward to working further with Rebuilding Together Tulsa. This is Jennifer, and she can give you a little bit of information about what she did and what they're doing with the money that we have provided them.
So I'm Jennifer Barkis-Schaefer with Rebuilding Together Tulsa, and on behalf of the 150 homeowners that we served last year, thank you very much for not only for the money, but also for the time that you give our clients. So we work very hard to make homes safe, secure, and weatherproof for those of our neighbors that can't afford to do it for themselves. We've been in Tulsa 18 years, and we love what we do, and we are grateful for all the support that we get and for making a difference in the lives of our neighbors. So thank you to Rotary and Rotary for having us today.
Before we do the Sergeant at Arms, I wanted to say something quickly to Chase. Good luck on your trip to Brazil. You didn't expect me to say anything, so I'm sorry, I surprised you. I have to practice my Portuguese, obrigado. Yeah, that's about the only word I learned down there, so. I think it means thank you, that's, yeah. All right, our Sergeant at Arms, Alicia Herrera.
Hello. I just have to, I know you guys are used to Matthew crying up here, but I have to say, Phil's song brought a tear to my eye. You do a beautiful job. Okay, and I have to start with an apology. Last week, I made the mistake of singing Happy Birthday to Tony Oliva, and I embarrassed him. That was supposed to be for Elaine Moore Jones, so Tony, I will not embarrass you anymore. I will not draw any attention to Tony Oliva at all anymore, so I'm sorry for that, Tony Oliva. So, here we are today. We're going to start with Miss Paula Wood. I don't think my clicker's working. There we go. Paula gave us $50 for her birthday. She's not here today. She's at the State of the State with our new Tulsa Public School Superintendent. So, in honor of our new superintendent, she gave $50. So, thank you, Paula. I know Chief Chuck Jordan is back there, and I wanted to thank him very much. I don't know if you saw this piece in the Tulsa World, but it was in response to the President's Commission on Policing in America saying police should be viewed as guardians and not warriors. And his statement was, our officers are often thrust into the role of warrior to fulfill their obligation as a guardian. So thank you, Chuck, for sharing that with us. Mr. Sid Shupak, I'm not sure if you're here. He gave $100, and I honestly think it's just because he feels really sorry for me. So thank you very much. And I came in today, so we don't have a slide to support this, but I came in today. Mr. Bob Spears and I share the best birthday ever, and that's this Friday, July 10th. So I wanted to mention happy birthday to Mr. Spears for his donation. And to the rest of our Rotarians that have birthdays this week, happy birthday.
All right, it's my pleasure to introduce our Rotarian of the day, Marty Alexander. Marty's been a member of our club since 1990. She's a Club Foundation Fellow and a Paul Harris Fellow. She's with World Travel Services, and she happens to put together a really great trip if you ever need a trip. I encourage you all to call her when you plan your trip to the Rotary International Convention in Seoul in 2016, or in Atlanta in 2017, or in Toronto in 2018. Marty is very experienced at planning those trips and can put something together, and I for one, will be a big cheerleader for that, Marty. So please welcome our Rotarian of the Day, Marty Alexander.
Thank you, President Jeff. Your time will come. Let me see. Chatty Cathy, the crass comedian. I don't know if I see any similarity in that at all. Did you know that Weber's is the oldest business in Tulsa's Brookside? Opened in 1933. Founder Oscar Weber Bilby is said to have created, grilled, the world's first hamburger on July 4th, 1891, and served the first world's root beer, the product of 14 secret all-natural ingredients. Did you know that Pawnee native Chester Gould, born in 1900, was the comic strip creator of Dick Tracy, and that you can see Dick Tracy paraphernalia in the Pawnee Museum? And did you know you can now take a tour of Tulsa's historic area in a Segway? You learn all these things when you watch the Discover Oklahoma, which is co-hosted by Dino Lalli, our speaker today. So when you've drained that travel budget for those worldwide vacations that you book for me, remember that you can always turn on Discover Oklahoma and find great destinations close to home. And you know you're from Oklahoma when it doesn't bother you to use an airport that's named after a man who died in a plane crash. Dino Lalli was born and raised in McAlester, Oklahoma, and is co-host and producer for Discover Oklahoma. Prior to joining the crew, Dino worked in the Oklahoma Film and Music Office for 9 years as field representative. His duties included location scouting and photographs, production, logistics, research, acting as a liaison between a production entity and the community, and a point of contact for various production companies. Prior to his service with the state, Dino was Creative Service Director in Television Division of a worldwide nonprofit organization in Oklahoma City. Over a 20-year period, Dino has served as entertainment editor and film critic for 3 television stations, an ABC and NBC affiliate in Oklahoma City, as well as KNBC in Burbank, California. While at Channel 5 in Oklahoma City, he hosted and produced an award-winning, nationally syndicated program on movies. Oh, tough call, huh? Tough job. He is one of just a handful of entertainment reporters in the country ever to be nominated for an Emmy Award. Several of the Academy Award specials Dino produced and hosted were nominated for regional Emmy Awards while at Channel 5. Much of Dino's work has aired nationally on various ABC affiliates, The Today Show, CNN, Showbiz Tonight, ESPN, Entertainment Tonight. Dino received his Bachelor of Arts degree in journalism, radio, TV broadcasting at the University of Oklahoma in 1978, Boomer. His freshman year at OU, he was a McMahon Journalism Scholar, and I understand a fraternity brother with our own president, Jeff. So I'm sure there's stories to be told there. He and his wife, Larissa, have 3 children. Please join me in welcoming our star today, Dino Lalli.
Jeff, you can sit back and relax. I won't tell any stories. You've heard of blackouts. Jeff can't remember anything between 78 and 80. Okay, one story. As Marty mentioned, I'm from McAlester, very proud to be from McAlester. But over the years, starting back in high school, I participated in a lot of speech, debate, and drama tournaments and traveled all over the state. And we got asked, the group of McAlester students got asked this a lot, and it still continues today. It happened actually at the Rotary luncheon that where I spoke in Stillwater recently. And a guy came up and said, you know, growing up in McAlester, the fact that the penitentiary is located there, Oklahoma State Penitentiary, growing up in McAlester, did it have any impact or influence on your life? No. No, it didn't at all. It is a complete coincidence if you look in some of our old yearbooks. It is a complete coincidence that each student had 2 pictures, one front, one profile, with a number underneath. And I told the gentleman, I said, it's funny you mention that because I now recall in shop class we made a lot of big wooden chairs. He walked off after that. So anyway, I've been with Discover Oklahoma for 8 years, and basically, in a nutshell, the show promotes Oklahoma tourism by telling interesting stories about people and destinations and tourist attractions across our state. It is an honor to do this. We have had so much fun, and it is a fun job to do that. And what I want to do right now is just take a moment. Jennifer Reynolds is my distinguished co-host. I just love her to death. She is one of the best writers I've ever seen. She has a wonderful personality. There is no ego. There's none of that. We have a blast when we go out and shoot what we call intros. So that's when Jennifer and I are on camera introducing the stories for the show. And what I want to do now is show you something that most people don't get to see. And those are some of the outtakes. Go ahead and roll the tape.
Hold on, my cord's sticking out. God, I'm all coming apart. Okay. All right, I'm good now. Things are falling off the... There we go. I have him in the palm of my hand right now. Okay. He's gonna go. I'm sorry, we're doing a TV show over here. Excuse me. There may be no better place to get a healthy heaping dose of that, didn't I? Did I take that from the Beverly Hillbillies? I think I did. Come on, set a spell.
Heaping dose.
And a heaping helper of our hospitality. Okay. I'm too fat to do Ellie Mae hands anymore. I can't fit in my pocket.
No!
Did we make it or did we do another one?
We're headed to T-Town.
Those are our fans. The only two we have, but there they are. Hi. There are some folks in Tulsa that don't any kind of nittish schmash. If you could do that.
But why leave the Sooner State? Why leave the Sooner State unless you absolutely have to? Really? But why leave the Sooner State if you don't have to? In fact, what's his name? Jeff. Jeff. Roberts. No one's... In fact, Jeff Roberts could do that, but why leave the Sooner State if you don't have to? In fact, Jeff Roberts takes us to the Water Zoo in Clinton. Jeez.
I'm just nodding and staring at you lovingly. Yes, that's right, Dino.
That's right.
This is my part of the job. I just do this on the show. Okay.
3.
I need one of those fans that blows my hair. No! All right, 3.
Isn't it a shame we have no fun whatsoever doing this show? Jennifer's cousin Beth. I'll be calling Jennifer on the way back to the office this afternoon. All right, people ask us all the time, where do you come up with your stories? And honestly, we get our best story ideas from viewers. We get emails and phone calls, sometimes letters. People say, you know what, this is in our town, come check it out. Or this diner's been here for 60-something years, third generation owned diner. The food is phenomenal. So we create a spreadsheet and keep track of all that. But the story can be a locally owned restaurant. It could be a bed and breakfast. It could be any kind of Oklahoma-related, tourism-related business that the public can visit. And there are some exceptions to that. I actually like doing more people stories. A few years back, I had a blast interviewing a lady by the name of Wanda Jackson. Who knows who Wanda Jackson is? Very good. For those who don't know, first of all, she's about this high. At 16 years old, this young lady with her mom and dad were on tour with a group of unknown musicians whose names included Jerry Lee Lewis, Johnny Cash, Carl Perkins, and a guy named Elvis. She actually dated Elvis for 2 years, and she still tours today. She's in her mid-70s now. We went to her house in Oklahoma City, and normally when we interview someone, we go to a restaurant or someplace. The interview takes 10, 12 minutes. We were there for 3 hours, and there had been a documentary that had just come out called The Sweet Lady with the Nasty Voice. And we were allowed to use a lot of the black and white video, the black and white photos of her literally growing up in the business. And so I'm interviewing her, and I brought up this documentary. and I said it, you know, this documentary, and it's a great documentary, The Sweet Lady with the Nasty Voice. And she just looked at me and just kind of looked down and goes, that title, The Sweet Lady with the Nasty Voice. And I thought, oh boy. She goes, I wasn't really sure about that title. And I thought, okay, great. And she looked up and smiled. She said, because I was never that sweet. But, you know, it's funny watching the outtakes. Another question I get asked fairly often, and Marty and I were talking about this, but if we go out to dinner with my family, or it happens all over the place, and it kind of comes and goes in spurts. It'll happen for 2-3 months, and then nothing will happen. But people will come up in the post office, in Target, the grocery store, wherever, and they recognize you, which is always very flattering. And someone asked me, what is that like? And I said, oh, it is very flattering, and there are some instances where you just can't make this stuff up. And years ago, before I'd actually started on Discover Oklahoma, I was flying to Los Angeles to interview some people in a movie. And so I had noticed there was an older couple sitting in the seating area, and he had a hat on, and they were just a very sweet couple, and they were staring, and you know, you get kind of used to it. So we get on board the plane. Well, they're right behind me, so I'm going down the aisle. I'm putting my stuff in the overhead bin, and he tapped me on the shoulder. Why he didn't do that out there, because it's crowded on the plane, and I'm not exaggerating, I'm not making fun, but because I think they were from Elk City or Sayre, western Oklahoma, and I kid you not, he was like, are you that there Dino Lalli? And I turned around and said, yes, sir, I am. And he turned back to his wife. Now, we're in an aisle of a plane, so you all know what that's like. So he's having to turn around, and he goes, I told you that was him. And I said, well, you know, nice to meet you. And he said, well, I've got to tell you, you don't look nearly as fat in person as you do on TV. And that's kind of the same look I had on my face when he said it. And his wife grabbed him by the shoulder and pulled him. She said, he said that wrong. He actually meant it as a compliment, that you look better in person. And he's like, oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I said that wrong. And I said, it's okay. And I said, as a matter of fact, did you know that a TV camera can actually add anywhere from 6 to 8 pounds on you? He goes, really? Well, how many of those cameras they have on you? Now people are laughing around, and this poor man didn't have a clue. His wife grabs his shoulder and says, sit down and shut up. We do 39 to 42 original shows a year. So if it's a normal week, and it's rare anymore that we have a normal week, we will shoot stories on Tuesdays, sometimes Wednesdays and Thursdays. And then we will shoot the intros that you saw. We'll shoot those once a week, or sometimes we'll shoot 2 shows in 1 week. In fact, we're doing that tomorrow, because as of Friday, I'm off for a week on vacation. So we'll shoot the show for July the 18th and the show for July the 26th tomorrow. And so that's kind of the routine. As I said, we get ideas from all over the place, and we do our own research as well. So what do tourists want to see beyond the obvious attractions? Sometimes the hardest part of looking for the little things that might, in many instances, be overlooked. Even the weird, junky art guy who doesn't represent the best of a town will bring people to the town. That's kind of sometimes what we look for. So if we want everyday things, things that you may not even think about. I did a story a few years back in Pryor. They have a shop downtown. It's an old building, and it's basically a catch-all store, but it's called Sandusky's Market in downtown Pryor, or Pryor, depending on where you're from. And we went up, and what was unusual about this is you walk in, and they had everything from seeds to groceries to feed to lanterns, just a really eclectic mix of things in the store. And there was this one gentleman who ran it with his mom, just wonderful people. These are the kind of people you could call them at 3 in the morning and say, I'm in Florida, would you come and help me? And they would. Just wonderful, sweet people. But a couple times a week, some locals go down to the Sandusky Market, and they bring their instruments, and they play music, and other people show up and they dance. And it was just one of those stories, as I said, I've been with the show 8 years. That's one of the ones that always stands out, it was just a joy to watch these people who are enjoying life. Some of them were retired, some were not. It just happened they tried to go down on their day off, and they're singing and dancing, and it's just one of my favorite stories. So that's one of those things that we try to look for, sometimes a little twist in there. You know, while people try to sell their attraction to the world, you also have to sell it to your people. And we are always talking to maybe some of the smaller communities to say, look what you have. You have something that we can maybe do a story on. But some of the top reasons people come to Oklahoma, according to the research through the Department of Tourism, are scenic drives, restaurants, historic sites, outdoor recreation, shopping, and museums. And we've done stories on all of these. I had a blast doing, there's a place in Sulphur, Davis, Oklahoma, called Air Donkey Zip Lines. And as Marty and I were talking, I've been an aviation geek since I was a child. I've been able to fly in an F-4 and F-14. I've parachuted out of a plane sober. I've done all the aerobatics. I love that. And this was Air Donkey Zip Lines, and one of the things that's fascinating about it is there's 6 different lines. The longest is 1,800 feet long. And you're zip lining through the Arbuckle Mountains. And at one point, I had extended my body to go faster. And of course, I had a GoPro on my helmet. So I'm trying to hold on, but yet go to the side so we can get a good shot of the video. And I look down, and through the trees, there are some deer just kind of gallivanting through the forest, through these trees. And of course, they stop and look up as if to say, "What are you doing?" As I went zipping by. And it was just one of those magical moments that stick with me all the time. Another story that comes to mind is I was honored to interview General Stafford at the Stafford Air and Space Museum in Weatherford. Again, being an aviation geek and who grew up watching all the NASA missions, what an honor to meet this gentleman. And I interviewed him, and he took us all to lunch afterwards. And of course, I was 5 years old all over again, just talking to him and asking him all these questions. And at one point, I brought up about something I thought this might be silly because I was actually taking some notes, and I said, "General Stafford, tell me about the fountain pen in outer space." I said, how did they come up with that? And he said, well, the United States government, NASA, spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to create and engineer a fountain pen that would write in zero gravity. We've all had a fountain pen and had to write something on the wall, and it takes a few seconds and the ink goes back and you can't write with it. And he said, but it took hundreds of thousands of dollars to create one. And I looked at him and said, I'm just kind of curious, what did the Russians, how did they do that? And he goes, they use pencils. We sometimes do try to think of stories that you would not think would work. There's a place in Canton, Oklahoma, called the Movie Poster Service. They have one of the largest collections of vintage movie posters in the country, and I've become good friends with them over the years. I've actually bought some things from them over the years, and that, again, was just a fun story. We just love showing off what we have in our state. And through the years, people have asked, well, where do you go on vacation? And I know sometimes they may be asking me to trip me up, and I'm always very honest with them. I'm not going to lie to anybody and say, look, my wife and I have 3 kids. Right now, their ages, I have an 18-year-old son, a 16-year-old daughter who started driving, and that's why I started drinking heavily, and a 14-year-old son. I'm married actually late in life. I didn't get married until I was 37, and my wife is a school teacher and a wonderful woman, and I'm just so blessed that she puts up with me. But I said, you know what? When the kids were a little bit younger, we did the Six Flags thing, we did the Branson thing, but consistently now for the last probably 7 or 8 years, I said, we actually vacation here, and getting a cabin at Robbers Cave, a cabin at Beaver's Bend, Romano's, and if we can go swimming, hiking, and go ride horses, and just enjoy and go fishing, my kids absolutely love it, and we do too. There's no electronics. We put all that away, and I purposely try to get a cabin that does not have a TV in it. And this told me something not too long ago. It was about 3 summers ago in May. And we were at dinner, all of us, and we were talking about, where would you want to go? They never brought up Branson. They never brought up Six Flags. What they talked about was the summer we did go to Robbers Cave last year when we went to Romano's. That's what they're remembering, and that's when the light bulb went off over my head to go, it's a free country, you can go where you want, but I also tell people, don't forget sometimes something might be right here and you just don't see it. We always talk about Travel OK. That's the tourism's website. And just the other day, you can go on there and you can plan to be spontaneous. There have been some Fridays where I've gotten home from work and we have nothing going on that weekend except just the normal thing of maybe cleaning, running some errands, and that kind of thing. And we'll look online and see there might be a particular event or a festival that we've never been to that's fun, that's maybe not that far away. And if our oldest son works quite a bit, but the other two go with us, and we've thrown them in the car, literally, and take off for the day. So I can tell people you can plan to be spontaneous. But just for instance, just the other day, I printed off some things. I just went on Travel OK when I was eating lunch at my desk. And for instance, here's some of the stuff you can find on the tourism website. 50 free things to do in Oklahoma. The 10 most beautiful places in Oklahoma. The top 10 state park experiences. That's just a few of the things you can find on there. I will tell you, too, that I've been doing a lot of stories at some of the state parks in western Oklahoma. With all the high water levels, we were quite surprised to hear from people out in the field, from Oklahomans who would call our department or specifically a state park. They actually thought all the state parks were closed. That was not the case at all. Some had to close sections. Beaver's Bend did have to close the entire park for about 2.5 weeks, but they've reopened. Texoma got hit the hardest, and now they're starting to reopen here and there. But I went out to Great Salt Plains State Park. I went to Foss State Park last week to do a couple of stories. They're open for business. The water levels are fine, and it's been fun to do those stories. And I think not this Saturday, the 11th, which is my birthday. Send money. But on the 18th, I think it's my story at Lake Murray Water Sports. But we shot that about 3.5 weeks ago. Their water levels are still fine. So we always encourage people, get out to the state parks. It's just, some of these are just beautiful places. Just call ahead if you want to double check. But we were really quite surprised to hear that a lot of people thought all the state parks were closed, because that was not the case at all. So you can always go to travelok.com and find out what's going on that weekend. The other thing we always want to talk about is just how tourism is big business in Oklahoma. Generated $2.1 trillion in economic output. $5.3 billion in annual traveler expenses. The Department of Tourism Industry creates over 80,000 jobs a year. The annual tax revenues generated by travelers contribute more than $842 million to federal, state, and local economies. For every $1 million spent in Oklahoma by domestic and international traveling, 11 jobs are actually created. Tourism impacts all 77 counties in our state. Last fiscal year, the state parks received over 13 million visitors. 1.5 million stayed in a state lodge or a cabin or a campground. So, and then I think last month we had over 1.8 million unique visitors to travelok.com. So we always like to talk about those kind of statistics to remind people that tourism, yes, it's fun, but it's also big business. So we always encourage people to look what's around you, explore what's around you. We have 50 parks, 7 golf courses, 5 lodges. We have over 400 cabins throughout the state. You can go boating, swimming, water skiing, camping. There are these wonderful nature centers. You can go scuba diving there at Texoma. And it's just so much fun, and it can be relaxing. I just did a story with a couple. The kids stayed at home. They're old enough they could stay at home, and they just wanted a weekend just getaway. So they hooked up their RV, and I told them, I said, well, I want to get video of you sitting maybe in a couple of chairs outside your RV. We can shoot video, and we did, of all of them, fishing and hiking. The gentleman brought his motorcycle. I said, that's all fun. That's all fun. But I want to emphasize when I do this story that we all need that just a couple of minutes just to sit down in the morning with a cup of coffee when you get up and you're looking at the beautiful lake. So we did. We shot video of them, which it was fun because they were trying to look like they were relaxing, but they were nervous. But they loosened up after a while after I gave them some tequila. But anyway, and it was 10 o'clock in the morning. No, I'm just kidding. We've actually done some stories with them before. They're wonderful people. But so that's why we always encourage people just to go to Travel OK, find out what's going on. And if you've had one of those kind of bad couple of weeks and you don't want to travel too far, you can always figure out something else to do to relax, even if it's an overnight trip, even if it's a day trip, just out and back. And so that's why we always tell people and we encourage people, and it's an honor to tell people to discover Oklahoma. And with that, I would like to open up to some questions. If you like, I'll be happy to answer some for you before we wrap things up here. Yes, sir.
Thinking back on actors or actresses that you've interviewed in Hollywood, who's the feistiest one you can remember that you could relate to?
Well, when you say feisty, do you mean bad? Like one of the worst interviews? Hands down, Tommy Lee Jones. I'm a fan of his work, but he has to be, no kidding, one of the most arrogant, condescending, hateful, manipulative schmucks I've ever met in my life. And I'm being nice. He is just, wow. If you're a female journalist and he can get you to cry, you just made his day. He just is, 95% of them are really wonderful people. Tom Hanks, Julia Roberts, Meryl Streep, Robin Williams, who actually he and I had become friends. And I saw something the other night online with him, and it still hurts my heart. He died the day of my dad's funeral last August. So we had just gotten home, and my phone blew up, and from literally about 8 text messages back and forth, did you hear about Robin Williams? Robin used to call the studio and insist, make sure Dino is invited to interview me for this movie, which I took as the ultimate compliment. They were fun. If you ask Tom Hanks a yes or no question, okay, he'll say yes or no, then he'll give you that soundbite that he knows that you need and want. If you ask Tommy Lee Jones a yes question, I kid you not, he'll look at you and go, yeah. And then he'll just stare at you. The last time I interviewed him, I think was for Men in Black 2. And when you walk into these hotel, they're done at a hotel, and like one floor, sometimes 2 floors, these big suites are turned into these interview suites. So someone like myself will walk in. They've already got everything lit. So there's a camera in the corner that's on me. There's a camera back here on them. They usually will have a boom mic above you, or they'll put a lavalier on you. And usually have 5 or 6 minutes. So I'm in the middle of my first question with him, and I could tell by looking at Tommy, but peripherally I could see that the camera guy in the corner was talking on his headsets, but I knew from experience that it would not pick up on my mic, okay? Well, but Tommy Lee heard him, and his eyes started darting around, and he looked around and started screaming at this guy and yelled, we're in a church, so I can't repeat some of the stuff he said, and just verbally maligned this guy for maybe 20 seconds, 30 seconds, just ripped him to shreds. And finally, he turned around and looked at me, and of course, the whole room was quiet, his publicist and everyone in the other room, and he looked at me and said, okay, well, continue. I said, man, I just want to get out of here alive, you know? And he thought that was funny. So his publicist, Jennifer Allen, who's a sweetheart, I don't know if it's a good cop, bad cop, stopped me outside the thing. She goes, that's the first time I've ever seen him laugh in an interview. And I said, but you need to tell Tommy Lee that most restaurants are serving decaf these days, because you really, he just is notoriously a bad interview. I don't know what it is. And even Harrison Ford for The Fugitive, I was in LA, and I had to fly home on a Saturday night. I don't know why, I can't remember, but we had done all the interviews for a couple of movies, one of which was The Fugitive, on a Saturday. But I had to fly home that night. But Tommy Lee's interviews were all on Sunday. Harrison Ford is another great guy, just fun, really, really good guy. And I had interviewed him like 22 times over a 20-year period. And when I first got an agent in LA, it happened to be next door to where Harrison Ford lived. So I'd gotten to know Harrison on a personal level, even after I'd started interviewing him. And he was on a break, so he walked me to the door, very polite guy, and he says, well, are you interviewing Tommy Lee for the future, for this movie? And I said, no, I'm actually flying home tonight, so I won't get to. And he looked at me with that kind of deadpan Harrison Ford, and he goes, I bet you're real disappointed about that. And, I said, well, okay. I said, you know what? You and I have always gotten along, and I said, I don't do gossip stuff. There's no cameras around. I said, what is his problem? He said, I don't know what to tell you. He's fascinating to work with. He said, I know he's kind of out there. Harrison was being very polite. He said, all I can tell you is if you're lucky enough to kind of be in his little universe, then that's great. And if you're not, which is 99% of the world population, you just kind of go with the flow. So, but really, most of them are very nice people. There are some that I just didn't care for them, because when the camera's rolling, that's one thing, but what I used to really pay attention to is when the camera's not rolling. Either before we started the interview or immediately afterwards, how they treated the people in the room. I was always very impressed with people like Bill Murray or Keanu Reeves, who I would happen to be the first one with them for the day, and they came in and they would introduce themselves to everyone in the room, which always was funny to see a guy go up and introduce himself to a camera guy. Hi, Bill Murray. Well, of course they know that. Or Keanu Reeves, who was a very polite gentleman. And most of them are like that. Sandra Bullock is truly a sweetheart. She is just so much fun. If you tell her ahead of time, hey, in this interview, I want to have some fun, some really fun, so I may throw some stuff at you, and she'll roll with it, and she won't complain. Most of them are really great. But yeah, Tommy Lee Jones is at the top of that list. So, I'm sorry, any other questions? He gets me riled up, see? Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Tommy Lee was your least favorite. Who was your most favorite?
Well, some of the ones I mentioned, I don't know if I have, again, Robin Williams probably was my favorite, because I got, and most of the journalists got, a 5-minute one-on-one performance with Robin. I used to have to tell Robin, I'm not HBO, so, watch your language. This is either at the time the ABC station in Oklahoma City, so this is not HBO, so watch your hands. And he was fine, but I was around him in non-working conditions at functions, and just a fascinating gentleman, very nice, very smart. I got asked the other day about him, as to what happened. Well, of course, I don't know what happened. I hadn't talked to him in a couple of years. But he was probably my favorite because it was just so much fun. Again, Tom Hanks is just what most of you think he is. He's just Mr. Nice Guy. He knows what you need, and he'll give it to you. And so there are quite a few who are on that list. But any other questions? Yes, sir.
Is there a piece or an interview that you always wanted to do but never?
What I would love to do, and this maybe sounds extremely geeky, but I would love to do maybe some more interviews with with astronauts, to get in contact with General Stafford, and because every year they usually come into Weatherford to his museum for a big banquet, and the last 2 years I've been invited and cannot go for other reasons. But I'd love to interview all of them. A few years back Neil Armstrong showed up, but that to me is just fulfilling that little boy who's been fascinated with space exploration and aviation since I can remember. It's always fun to interview sports figures and people of that nature, but I also tell people, and when I talk to a lot of young groups too, like in high school or middle school, that everyone looks up to athletes and movie stars for role models, and I always remind them, I was lucky in that my role model was my dad. He died the day before his 92nd birthday, and he was working up until the day before he got sick 3 months before that, because my dad loved to work. He loved what he did. He worked in a grocery store since he was 14 up until 3 months before he got sick, and when he couldn't work, it just irritated him. That was his passion. He had owned some stores over the years, and he loved people and being around them, and it kept him going. So that was my role model. But I always remind people, it's great to athletes and stars and all that, but look at what they stand for, and look sometimes in your own house for a real true role model, a mom or a father, and So I always remind people of that. So, yes, sir.
Can you name 2 or 3 real treasures, hidden treasures in Oklahoma that you discovered that you didn't know about before?
You know, one would be, I knew it's been there for years, but I actually had only been there the first time recently, and that is the Salt Plains National Refuge up by the Great Salt Plains State Park, where you can go up and dig for these selenite crystals. And these crystals, you can't find these kind of crystals anywhere else in the world. And I found that totally fascinating. And when you pull around the corner and kind of down a little bit, it's nothing but it's white. It looks like it's the surface of another planet. I think that's one of those, and I'm writing the story. I'll actually finish it when I get back to the office. It's 90% done. And that'll air sometime in August. That's one that comes to mind. And the other one, perfectly honest, is to tell people, if you've never been to Beavers Bend State Park or anywhere down in that far southeastern part of the state, wow. The first time I went there, I was just in awe of just how beautiful it is. I love to fly fish when I can. It's just a beautiful area. And the other thing that's fascinating is when you look around the parking lot of the lodge and the park, 75% of the license plates are from Texas. So we always tell them, it's like, you know what, if you want to come up here and spend money, we'll take it. So those are the first 2 that come to mind. But, well, thank you all so much. It's always fun to get out and talk to everyone, so appreciate your time.
My favorite line from The Fugitive, Tommy Lee Jones is chasing Harrison Ford. Harrison Ford's about to jump off a cliff. He turns around to Tommy Lee Jones and says something to the effect of, "I'm innocent." And Tommy Lee says, "I don't care." It was an ad lib. Wow. I love that. I've used that on my kids many times. Yeah. Sometimes more effective than others. A big thank you to all of our volunteers who made it possible today. Thank you again, Mark, for manning the camera. You are cool. Thank you today, Dino, for signing the book that we will give to our partner in education school. It's called Call Me Oklahoma. We searched deep to find an appropriate one, and thank you for inscribing that. Thank you all for attending. Don't forget to go out and tell your folks about Rotary. We're adjourned.